Welcome to Novelist Spotlight. This is Mike Consol, your host. In addition to being the host of this podcast and interviewing novelists, I am a novelist myself. I have 3 published novels. My latest is titled Lolita Firestone, a supernatural novel, and it is set in Sedona, Arizona and Cairo, Egypt. My previous novel is titled Family Recipes, a novel about Italian culture, Catholic guilt, and the culinary crime of the century. And my first novel is named Hardwood, a novel about college basketball and other games young men play, and that story deals with issues ranging from depression and racism to sex, religion, and university politics. All 3 novels are listed in the episode notes. I hope you will buy them, I hope you will read them, and I hope you will thoroughly enjoy them. Now, on with our program. Thank you for listening. This is Mike Consol. It's going on about 2 years now since I started Novelist Spotlight, and I started for a very specific reason. I saw it as an opportunity to interview published novelists, as I've been doing, and through those interviews to inspire my own writing. As a lot of you know, I've written and published 3 novels. I also have a short story collection, which I haven't published yet, but I will in due time. And what ended up happening is not really what I expected. I mean, on one hand it did, because I was inspired by the authors I've been interviewing, very much so. But what ended up happening that I didn't expect was that my own writing stalled. So for a year, the novel that I've been working on has been fallow. I was putting a lot of energy into the podcast. Plus, I work a full-time job as a magazine editor. I'm a married man. I have a wife to attend to. There's a lot going on in life. I work out regularly. I'm pretty much a workout fanatic. So it's a busy life. And I ended up publishing a podcast every week. And I decided, this is a little too much. I need to scale back. It might even be too big a volume for the people who follow the podcast. So I scaled back to once every 2 weeks with a podcast. Generally, anyway, that's how it works. Although this week I'll probably be publishing 2. So I finally broke out of that, though. I finally took the advice of, really a couple of the novelists that I've interviewed. One of them, you might remember this interview that I had with this author, and he made a commitment that really changed his writing life. He decided he would write a word a day. And of course, what he said is that once you open your laptop and fire it up and you sit down to write, you're going to do more than a word. Only one time did he say he literally did 1 word just to keep his commitment that every day he would write a word. But other than that, he would write at least a sentence or a paragraph, or spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes or even an hour writing. But because of the commitment of 1 word, which is that 1 word commitment was not intimidating, so it encouraged him, just go ahead and open the laptop. There's nothing to be afraid of. It's just 1 word. But once that's a big hurdle right there. It's just getting to that point where you're opening up the laptop or sitting down with your pad and pen and getting started. So that worked for him. And what I ended up doing is picking up on that, and I have an alarm on my phone that goes off every day at the same time that says 1 paragraph. So rather than 1 word, I've made a commitment to 1 paragraph. Still something very reasonable. I mean, a paragraph can be 1 sentence, for crying out loud. A paragraph could actually be 1 word. That has made a difference to me. That's made a difference because I've now been able to apologize about the road noise. I'm actually commuting to the office, which I only do one day a month. So hopefully the road noise that you might be hearing isn't annoying. But that decision to do the 1 paragraph a day has made a big difference. And there was another guest that I had, and she said that whether you're going to write or not, she said just touching the copy each day to make sure that you stay familiar with the copy, that you have a sense of connection to it, And she didn't say this part, but I'm going to add this. When you have that sense of connection with the copy, and you're remembering where you are with it, you're remembering what your story's about, it allows your mind, the brain, to go to work on that, even when you're not writing. It allows it to incubate while you sleep, while you drive, while you stand in line at the grocery store, while you might be sitting watching a television program or watching a movie. So it's very valuable in that regard. And by saying a paragraph a day, if I actually follow through with that, I'm touching that copy every day. More than touching the copy, I'm being creative with it. I'm adding to it each day. And I think that's one of the issues that we face is sometimes that we think we need to create a lot of copy every day. I mean, that's a wonderful thing if you can. And there are people who say, 1,000 words or even 5,000 words in a single day, understanding that I'm going to produce a lot of verbiage, 90% of which or more I'll throw away because it's not up to snuff. But by the actual act of writing and pushing forward, I'm breaking that ice and creating opportunities that would not otherwise exist. So as I've been doing the one paragraph a day, I find myself writing more content than just the one paragraph. Although there have been days when all it was one paragraph. But something else happened too. And that is that the novel that I was working on, I have abandoned. I've just decided that's not what I'm going to be doing. Instead, what I'm doing, and why did I do that? Well, simply because I just didn't feel that it was going to work. Or at least it wasn't going to work at a level that was going to be what I wanted or what I was capable of, what I am capable of. So instead, I've gone to my next project with that same paragraph per day commitment of another short story collection. Now, a lot of people would say short stories, you know what, if you're already famous as a writer, they'll be interested in short stories, like they were with Hemingway, or like they were with Updike, or any number of authors out there who were famous for their novels and then ended up writing some short story collections. But if you are not famous and you come to people with short stories, that is not something that an agent or editor is going to be very interested in. It would be a rare event for that to happen. They might be right, I don't know. I think they probably are right, but I think times have changed to some degree. One of the things that happened was George Saunders wrote 10th of December, which became a #1 bestseller, a collection of short stories. It was a small book, a small collection of short stories, experimental writing, hit #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. I read it and listened to it. That's one of the few books, I think only one of 2 books, I've ever actually read the print copy while also listening to the audio edition, which is read by George Saunders, because it was not an easy read. It is experimental fiction writing, and I was of the mind that, I don't know what this is actually supposed to sound like, and here's George doing an audio edition, so I'm going to listen. I mean, George is going to read it to me while I read it with my eyes. I'm going to listen with my ears while George reads it to me while I'm also reading with my eyes, and that really worked well. It was a good decision I made. I wouldn't recommend that for, like I said, there's only been a couple times I've done that. I wouldn't recommend it for most books because it's not necessary. But his book hitting #1 on 10th of December, hitting #1 on a New York Times bestseller list. In addition to that, we're living in a different era where short form writing is seemingly essential these days because people have such short attention spans, especially young people. Social media rules the day. More people reading and writing than ever because of social media, but it also is in such short form. And now social media has really moved into the video era, where people are doing more video than they're doing writing. Now, I don't mean technically that there's more hours of video than hours of reading out there. What I do mean is that a lot of people are making the transition, deciding, why write it at all? I will just make a video of it. Some of these videos don't even have any kind of narrative with it. Now, if there has narrative, then they're doing some writing, but a lot of times it's these kind of goofy pet videos, and they're entertaining. I like wild animal videos, lions and hyenas and such. They're entertaining. I like them, and it's nature at work. It really gives you a little different perspective on life. That the way life really is outside of the human family, where it's really a fight for survival. And what is natural to most living creatures on this planet is preying upon others or being preyed upon, or both. So, because of all this short form writing, and now again, that's very short form writing normally in social media, and because of short attention span, I think that the short story is a form that's going to have a resurgence. And I think the short stories are going to become shorter. There was a short story collection published within the last 4 or 5 years. Dwight Garner of the New York Times Book Review had reviewed it, and he had talked about some of the short stories were one long paragraph was it. That they were very short. It was like flash fiction, really. It's more so than short stories. Maybe flash fiction was really what it should have been labeled as. But that's the sort of thing that people are used to these days, and maybe even demand these days, because they don't have the patience for full-length novels. Now, that's not entirely true, because obviously you see full-length novels that sell really well. And if a novel is written with manageable size chapters, people could even look at those novels as really kind of a collection of short form writing, a collection of short stories, chapter by chapter. When we can when we create that sense of progress and destination with a novel, because the chapters are short enough that they can be consumed in a single sitting, and maybe even create this drama for the next section of the novel, then fine. I guess what I'm saying is I'm making an argument that, or trying to convince myself that short stories are not off the table. Then there are a few agents out there that look for short stories that will represent them. So, of course, wish me luck with that, as I wish you luck with your writing. I just wanted to share that with you because I go through all the same trials and tribulations as every other writer out there, and I do benefit from the input of published authors who have found techniques that are useful, that I can adapt, that you can adapt. And I have felt this sense of momentum, even with the novel that I abandoned. I felt a sense of momentum building, but then, I looked at what was ahead, and I thought, as I said, this isn't really going to work for me. And sometimes that's what we have to do to figure out whether or not a novel is viable for us. You just start writing it. Just dive into it, and you start writing, and you see if there is an energy about it, an energy level there. I just heard somebody say, I think it's in Matt Bell's book, and I'm going to share that with you. I tried to get Matt Bell. He's a guy who's written some very good writing books, and he's also written novels. He teaches at Arizona State University, which is my alma mater. I was disappointed that he was too busy to come on the program. But in the book I'm reading from him right now, and which I'll share portions of with you in a future podcast, is So this woman said that she looks for those parts in a novel where she can see and feel, hear the energy and the enthusiasm of the author. We are not always... I can relate to that, because when you're reading a novel, I know my own experiences when I'm reading a novel, you can sense whether the author is just putting a lot of connective tissue in there right now, or whether they're really in the channel. And there's a lot of energy, and there's a lot of inspiration behind the writing. And of course I see that in my own writing. I know when I can look back at the things I've written and say that was some writing time where I was really inspired and I was energized. I like energetic writing to begin with. I like writing that conveys a lot of energy, and kind of writing where when I'm reading it, it adds to my energy. It doesn't put me to sleep. It's not something I'd want to put on the nightstand to try to go to sleep to, because it's energizing. Really a hard thing to do, but there are people out there who do it very well. Anyway, Matt Bell, as I was saying, he is a big believer in setting some kind of productivity level, whether it's a word count or amount of time that you're going to spend each day writing. He thinks that metrics are important, or commitments of that kind are important. It works for him. But he also is he's also cautious in saying that, anything that works for you that I talk about in this book, use it. Anything that doesn't square with you, don't use it. Which is, of course, good advice, because not everybody's the same. People respond differently to different things. One more thing about Matt Bell and what he said, he refers to Sam Shepard. He says, anytime you're going to do a piece of writing, just jump into it. And Matt Bell says, it's great to talk about the process. It's fun to talk about the process of writing and techniques like I've been doing right now. But writing is a confrontation. It's daunting to start a novel. It's daunting to do the next chapter. It's daunting to rewrite a chapter that all we have is raw materials for. And we have all these techniques, but what good are those techniques if we don't actually just dive in and put them to work? But look at it that way. It's a confrontation. And there's all kinds of people who don't like confrontation. Now, they don't like human confrontation. They don't want to argue with anybody. They don't want to disagree with anybody. I wonder if that translates into writing, whether a confrontation on the page or on the screen is something that also they are shying away from because it's just not comfortable. Well, writing isn't necessarily comfortable anyway. Even for people who have done it for a long time, it is still confrontational. It's still uncomfortable. Well, I'm looking forward to finishing that Matt Bell book, and I'm going to excise some portions for you and tell you about that. But the real, just coming full circle, the point of this podcast was to share with you this daily one-paragraph commitment I've made, this idea of touching the copy each day, how the podcast, Novelist Spotlight podcast, actually stalled my writing, but now it's getting it re-inspired. It certainly has been inspirational to talk to all the authors, but it didn't mean that I actually did the writing. Now it's got me going again, which is a good thing. And hopefully you are running full throttle with your own writing. I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you for listening. For Novelist Spotlight, this is Mike Consol.